Hey, I'm Matt, and nothing I'm going to say today is going to make any sense whatsoever without first explaining the plot of Back to the Future 2. So this is happening. Biff Tannen is the bad guy in these movies, and in Back to the Future 2, he takes an almanac from 2015 that records the scores and results of sporting events for the past 50 years, and he warps back to 1955 and hand delivers it to the 18-year-old version of himself back then. Well, then Biff, who is horrible and lacking in character, of course, uses his knowledge of the future to bet and make tons of money, and then he uses the money and power he accumulates as a result to do horrible, exploitative things to everyone in his life. So Doc and Marty, the good guys in the film, have to go back in time to confront this and get the almanac away from him. And when they do confront it, Biff is not really excited about giving up his little racket. So rather than saying, "You caught me," he instead pulls out this shiny silver revolver and tries to murder Marty. And that is just like Acts chapter 16. There's this slave girl who is owned by this dude who's making tons of money off of her because, as weird as this sounds, she knows the future. And people are willing to shell out major coin to know what's going to happen to them next. Paul comes along, has this encounter with this girl, and casts out the spirit that's giving her the ability to predict the future. I know, it sounds crazy. But apparently it worked because now she can't predict the future anymore. And the guy who owns her is furious because his racket just got broken up. The Bible always makes more sense in bigger chunks. So I want to give you a second to pause and read Acts 16 verses 16 through 24. And then we'll pick it up and tear into the thing. Verse 16. Once when we were going to the place of prayer, we were met by a slave girl who had a spirit by which she predicted the future. And she earned a great deal of money for her owners by fortune telling. It's hard to believe a girl could tell the future. At the same time, people were paying money for it, and people don't tend to pay for things unless it has some actual value to them. We've all met people who are sophisticated liars and pretend to commune with the dead or know the future, but these people are usually well-educated adults. This is a simple, uneducated slave girl. And further, as soon as a few verses later, Paul calls out this spirit and casts it out, she's not able to do this anymore. So there are reasons in the text and because of our knowledge of how the marketplace works that suggest there was actually something to this claim that she could do meaningful fortune telling. So if there is something going on here that's legitimately supernatural, it begs the question, where is that power coming from? And I think there's a hint of an answer hidden in the original Greek that Luke was writing in. You see, Luke talks about spirits and demons and other stuff like that all over the Gospel of Luke and in the book of Acts, but he never uses the certain phrase that he employs here anywhere else. Here, the original Greek for predicting the future or spirit of divination is pythonic spirit. Ever heard of that? Well, most people haven't, which is why translators of the New Testament today don't use that phrase from the original Greek. They just use something we would get, like fortune teller, could tell the future. But the original audience would have known exactly what that phrase meant, because in Greek mythology, there's this snake dragon thing called Python. It lives on Mount Parnassus near the place that we now call Delphi. And Apollo, the son of Zeus, went and tracked down that dirty snake dragon lizard thing and killed it because he was mad about some stuff that happened. The result is that at the site of Delphi, the spirit of future predicting through the power of Python is harnessed by Apollo and is imbued upon these oracles who live on the mountain and who all the people of Greece for centuries and centuries could go to and consult for wisdom. It's an oracle, right? Well, people also believed that weaker incarnations of the spirit of Python popped up from time to time in female fortune tellers around the Greek world. So they would have believed that this was not just your run-of-the-mill scam artist. This was somebody who had a little bit of that Delphi power in them. The endorsement of Apollo, one of the rock stars of the Greek cosmology of gods, was behind this in the minds of most people who would have been reading it. To the 21st century audience, this looks like it's shaping up to be a confrontation between Paul and the institution of slavery. But to the original audience, this would have been looking like it was shaping up to be a confrontation between the son of Zeus and the son of God. Picking it up in verse 17. This girl followed Paul and the rest of us shouting, "These men are servants of the Most High God who are telling you the way to be saved." And she kept this up for many days. And finally, Paul became so troubled that he turned around and said to the spirit, "In the name of Jesus Christ, I command you to come out of her." At that moment, the spirit left her. A couple things here. First, This is reminiscent of Luke chapter 4 and Luke chapter 8, where a couple of different spirits have an encounter with Jesus and they recognize him from a long ways away. They know who he is and they identify him as such. And anybody who was listening to what these spirits were saying would have thought, man, that's kind of weird because they seem really destructive and bad. But all of a sudden, when they get around this Jesus guy and they kind of tidy up their act, and they can't help but acknowledge that Jesus is the Son of God. The same thing happens here. This spirit that's only been useful for making money for a slave owner suddenly is prompting this girl to point people toward the message of Paul and to affirm the message of Jesus. Well, first of all, that's going to be kind of confusing for people because they've never heard the Spirit do that. But also, it's going to be kind of affirming for the whole message of Paul in Philippi, because even though it's coming from a source you don't really like, there is spiritual, supernatural affirmation that what he's saying is true. I don't know if how she was saying it was annoying. I don't know if it was one of those things where you're just trying to have a conversation and somebody keeps badgering you, like the people at tourist places who always try to sell you stuff while you're just trying to talk with somebody you like over dinner. But it seems like Paul just gets annoyed and does an irritated exorcism or something. Like, just, okay! Just stop! In the name of Jesus, you just stop! And that's it. There's no fancy smancy thing or holding people down in bed with like leather straps and their head spins around and they puke all over everybody or magic or anything. It's just like this little flick of a finger. And to us, it's like, wow, okay, there's another exorcism like in the rest of the Bible. But again, think about this in light of how the people of Philippi saw it and how the people who were reading this in the original audience saw it. The spirit of Python is backed by the power of Apollo. Apollo is the embodiment of Zeus. He's the son of God in the Greek cosmology. And now, with just the mention of the name of the son of God, of the God of Abraham, that's it. Jesus dispenses with the son of the Greek God with no effort, no resistance whatsoever. That would have spoken volumes to people at this time and in this culture. Verse 19, when the owners of the slave girl realized that their hope of making money was gone, they seized Paul and Silas and dragged them into the marketplace to face the authorities. They brought them before the magistrate and said, "These men are Jews and are throwing our city into an uproar by advocating customs unlawful for us Romans to accept or practice." A couple things here. The marketplace, again, tells us that something real occurred here. There'd be no complaint to have against Paul if this girl could continue to do the things she was doing before. But she can't. She doesn't have it anymore. And so, well, they're mad. And if you're anything like me, you feel, of course, zero sympathy for some exploitative slave owner. But this guy has been put out of business, and that is an outrage. So, since his ideas can't hold water on their own, or his conduct doesn't have enough merit to make money on its own, he goes right to the police and the government and says, "Make me win where I lost. Make me the winner, because this guy's Jewish and he's undermining our customs and justice or something." He's just making stuff up. All he cares about is that he can't exploit this kid the way he used to anymore. And so he hits all the chords that you needed to hit in this day and age to get people on your side politically. These Jews are outsiders. We remember from the last passage there was no synagogue in Philippi. So it would be easy to say they're strange and their customs are weird and we don't get them. Therefore they are bad. He accuses them of trying to imprint customs upon the people of Philippi that are bad for Rome, but I don't really see Paul doing that anywhere. It feels like a false accusation. And he says they're putting the city into an uproar. That's something we're going to keep seeing in all of these accounts moving forward. There's this terror on the part of well-to-do free cities that Rome will no longer view them as able to handle their own business. And Rome was cool with letting these towns run themselves until they screwed up and couldn't keep order. And as soon as you demonstrated yourselves to be incapable of keeping order, the home office in Rome would come in, depose all your leaders, and run the show themselves. And nobody in Philippi wanted that. So these accusations resonate with enough people that without any question or any trial or any thinking it through, they just go right into beating mode. And that's where we pick it up in verse 22. The crowd joined in the attack against Paul and Silas, and the magistrates ordered them to be stripped and beaten. After they had been severely flogged, they were thrown into prison, and the jailer was commanded to guard them carefully. Upon receiving such orders, he put them in the inner cell and fastened their feet in the stocks. What? Paul is a Roman citizen. In the same way that you're a citizen of your country, and that means that you're entitled to this thing called due process of law, it means so is Paul. So the irony here, and again, this is another one of those the original audience would have totally picked up on this thing, is that they want to preserve order in their town by being lawful so the Romans won't come and mess with them. So they flog and beat a Roman citizen without a trial to put things back in order. Ah! That's going to backfire, and we'll get to that next time around. We're going to leave Paul in this awful situation. He's being treated unjustly and horribly. Have you ever heard the saying, it's not like if you're not irritating people, maybe you're not accomplishing anything? Well, Paul is clearly accomplishing something if we're going to use that measure, because he's irritating people left and right to the point of violence. Hey, you might have noticed the 10-minute Bible Hour brand back at the beginning of this. I'm going to try to put that at the front of anything where I'm overtly talking about Christianity or Bible so that it's easy to keep track of what's what. If you just like that stuff and don't want to see my dumb movie reviews or stupid political opinions, you can just avoid those and look for things that have the 10-minute Bible Hour branding on it. We'll have fun with that. In the meantime, here's a 50-50. If you like what I'm doing and you think it's worth a subscription to keep tabs on me, I've got these two buttons. You can click them until you get the one you want. One will actually subscribe you to my channel. The other one is going to give you Scott Stapp's Anthem to the Florida Marlins. It's my gift to you. I'm Matt. I have a blast doing this with you. Thank you for watching the thing, and we'll catch you soon.